ruffle some feathers. By the way, welcome to anybody new. So this is the post I put up yesterday. Not sure if you had a chance to look at it. A few have commented on it. It's titled, "Is Marriage Still Worth It? The Realities of Modern Relationships for Masculine Men." Obviously, that answer for most guys will probably be no, but we'll get into it on why. And it'll trigger a lot of people because, unfortunately, some of the guys that'll be listening to this, at least on the YouTube side, are already in some of these relationships and they're trapped. But we'll have an open discussion about this after. More so curious about a specific question in mind of what everybody thinks about marriage becoming a luxury where only rich people partake or those that are physically gifted. And the rest of society is going to kind of, I wouldn't even say shun it, but it won't make sense for them to get married for the reasons that will be specified in the article here. So I'll read it all the way through and then let's discuss some of this. So it starts off with, ever wonder why the fuck so many guys these days are swearing off marriage like it's the plague? It's like watching lemmings spring off a cliff, each one convinced they're making the smartest move of their life. But here's the $1 million question. Is marriage still worth it for the masculine man who's put in the work to level up his life? Let's cut through the bullshit and get to the meat of the issue. I get it. You turn on the TV, scroll through social media, or just talk to your buddies, and all you hear are the horror stories about marriage. Guys losing half their shit in divorces, becoming weekend dads, or worse, turning into those pathetic henpeck husks of men who need permission to scratch their own balls. It's enough to make any self-respecting man run for the hills. But hold up a second. Before you join the chorus of doomsayers, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Oh, my glasses, my eyes are burning already. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. Divorce rates. Yes, they're high. Over 50% of marriages in the U.S. end in divorce. That's a coin flip on your future, and a lot of guys, And for a lot of guys, those aren't odds they're willing to take. But here's the thing. That statistic doesn't tell the whole story. It's like looking at the casualty rates of war without considering who's fighting and how they've trained. See, the problem isn't marriage itself. The problem is that most people rushing into marriage are fucking clueless. They're operating on outdated software, trying to navigate a minefield with a map from the 1950s. Society's changed. The roles of men and women have shifted, and most guys haven't got a clue how to adapt. They're still playing by old rules in a game that's completely changed. But for the man who's done the work, who's invested in himself, becoming a top-tier version of himself, the game is entirely different. I'm talking about the guy who's hit the gym, built his career, developed his emotional intelligence, and cultivated genuine confidence. This man isn't looking for a woman to complete him. He's already whole. He's looking for a partner to complement his life, not complicate it. Now let's talk about the legal risks. Yes, they're real and they're serious. The family court system isn't exactly known for being fair to men, but that's where being a high value man changes the equation. When you're the prize, when you're the one bringing real value to the table, you have options. You can set terms. You can ensure your assets are protected. More importantly, when you choose a woman who respects you, who's feminine and submissive in the right ways, the chances of ending up in a courtroom clusterfuck drop dramatically. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're a guy who spent years grinding, building your empire. You've got your shit together financially, physically, and mentally. You meet a woman who's not just hot, but who's genuinely admires and respects you. She's feminine, supportive, and sees your vision for a future. She's not trying to compete with you. She wants to complement you. Now, that's a foundation for a marriage that can weather any storm. But let's be real, this kind of relationship doesn't just fall in your lap. You have to earn it. And that's where a lot of guys fuck up. They think that they can skip the self-improvement part and still land a top-tier woman. Sorry, boys, it just doesn't work that way. The kind of woman who's going to stand by you, support your mission, and add value to your life isn't going to settle for some schlub who's content with mediocrity. Now, I know some of you are thinking, why bother with marriage at all? Why not just stay in a long-term relationship without the legal bullshit? And it's a fair question. And for some guys, that might be the right move. But here's why marriage done right trumps all the alternatives. First, it's about commitment. Yeah, I know in today's world, commitment is about as popular as a fart in an elevator. But hear me out. When you find a woman who's truly on your level, who adds value to your life in ways you didn't even know were possible, locking that shit down isn't just smart, it's strategic. It's about building a legacy, creating a stable environment for raising kids, and having a ride or die partner who's got your back. Second, there's something to be said about or for the societal recognition that comes with marriage. Like it or not, the world treats married couples differently. It's a signal to the world that you're a man who can commit, who can lead, who can build something lasting in business, in social circles, even in how you're perceived by other women. Being a successfully married man carries weight. But let's not sugarcoat this shit. Marriage in the modern world is a minefield, and if you're not careful, you'll end up as another statistic. So how do you navigate this? How do you ensure you're not just another sucker being led to the slaughter? It starts with you. Before you even think about putting a ring on, you need to become the kind of man who can handle a high quality woman. This isn't about 6-pack abs or a 7-figure bank account, although those don't hurt. It's about developing unshakable frame, emotional stability, and a clear vision for your life. Let's break this down because this is where most guys fuck this up. They think being a high value man is all about external shit, the car, the watch, the fancy job title, but that's surface level bullshit. Sure, it might get you laid, but it won't keep a quality woman around. What really matters is your internal game. Unshakable frame, that's about knowing who you are and what you stand for. It's about having principles and sticking to them, even when the world's trying to knock you off course. It's about being able to lead, not just in the good times, but especially when shit hits the fan. A woman needs to know when everything's falling apart, you're the rock she can cling to. Emotional stability isn't about not having emotions. It's about knowing how to handle them. It's about not flying off the handle every time something doesn't go your way. It's about being able to stay cool under pressure, to make rational decisions even when the emotions are running high. A quality woman doesn't want a robot, but she sure as hell doesn't want an overgrown child who can't control his temper. And a clear vision for life, that's your roadmap, your game plan. Where are you going? What are you building? A high quality woman wants to know that you're going somewhere, that you have ambitions beyond just making it to the weekend. She wants to see that fire in your eyes when you talk about your goals, your dreams. She wants to know that you have a plan and that you have the balls to follow it through. Once you've done that work on yourself, it's about choosing the right woman. And I'm not just talking about a nice ass and a pretty face. I'm talking about a woman who genuinely respects and admires you. A woman who's feminine in her energy, who's supportive of your goals, and who's willing to follow your lead. This doesn't mean a doormat. A high quality woman will challenge you and make you better, but she'll do it in a way that builds you up, not tears you down. Now let's talk about feminine energy because it's crucial. In a world where everyone's screaming about equality and blurring gender lines, embracing femininity has become almost taboo. But here's the truth. Masculine and feminine energy complement each other. They're like two puzzle pieces that fit perfectly. When you've got a woman who's in touch with her feminine side, who's nurturing, supportive, and emotionally intuitive, it allows you to fully step into your masculine role. This dynamic creates a beautiful balance. You lead, she supports. You make tough decisions, she provides the emotional backbone that keeps the family together. You protect and provide, she nurtures and cares. It's not about one being better than the other. It's about each playing to their strengths in a way that creates a powerful synergy. But finding a woman like that in today's world, it's like trying to find a unicorn in a sea of donkeys. The modern dating scene is a fucking cesspool of entitled princesses, career-obsessed ball-busters, and Instagram thoughts who think that taking selfies is a personality trait. So when you find a woman who's feminine, supportive, and has her shit together, you better recognize what you got. Let me break it down for you with a hypothetical. Meet John. John spent his 20s building his business, hitting the gym, and developing his social skills. By 30, he's confident, successful, and has his pick of the women. He meets Sarah. Sarah's not just hot, she's smart, supportive, and shares his values. They date for a couple years, during which John vets her thoroughly. He sees how she handles stress, how she treats others, how she manages money. He's not just thinking with his dick, he's evaluating a potential life partner. They get married, but here's the kicker. John's not walking into this blind. He's got a prenup that protects his assets. He's discussed and agreed on life goals, including finances, kids, and career aspirations. He established himself as the leader in the relationship, and Sarah is happy to support this dynamic. Fast forward to 10 years, while his buddies are dealing with nagging wives, dead bedrooms, and soul-crushing divorces, John and Sarah are still going strong. They built wealth together, raised kids, and still can't keep their hands off each other. John's marriage isn't a burden, it's a force multiplier in his life. Now, is this a fairy tale? For most guys, yeah, it is. But that's because most guys aren't willing to put in the work to become the kind of man who can create and maintain this kind of relationship. They want the high quality woman without being the high quality man themselves. Sorry boys, but it doesn't work that way. Let's contrast it with John's story. Another hypothetical. Meet Mike. Mike's your average guy. He's got a decent job. He's in okay shape. He's got some ambition, but he's not really pushing himself. He meets Lisa. Lisa's hot, she's fun, and Mike thinks he's hit the jackpot. They date for a while, have great sex, and Mike decides to pop the question because, well, that's what you're supposed to do, right? Fast forward 5 years, Mike's miserable. Lisa's constantly nagging him, spending money they don't have, and making him feel like shit for not earning more. The sex is dried up, and Mike finds himself dreading coming home from work. He feels trapped, emasculated, and he's starting to resent the hell out of Lisa. What went wrong? Mike never did the work on himself. He never developed that unshakable frame, that clear vision for his life. He let himself get swept along by what he thought he was supposed to do, rather than consciously choosing his path. And because he wasn't the prize, because he wasn't bringing real value to the table, he ended up with a woman who truly didn't respect him. This is the reality for so many marriages today. Guys rushing in thinking with their dicks instead of their heads, and then wondering why they're miserable a few years down the line. They blame the marriage as an institution, they blame women, they blame society, but the truth is they got no one to blame but themselves. Marriage can be one of the most powerful alliances a man can form if he does it right. It can provide stability, support, synergy that could catapult you to levels you couldn't reach alone, but it requires work, wisdom, and balls. You need to have the courage to hold out for the right woman, the wisdom to lead effectively, and willingness to keep putting in the work even after you said, I do. Let's talk about that last part for a second because it's crucial. Too many guys think that once they've put a ring on it, they can relax. They let themselves go. They stop pursuing their goals with the same intensity. They get comfortable. And that is the kiss of death for a marriage. A high-quality woman doesn't want a man who's content to sit on his ass and coast. She wants a man who's constantly growing, constantly pushing himself to be better. She wants to look at you with the same admiration and respect year after year. And that means you have to keep leveling up. This doesn't mean that you need to become a workaholic or neglect your family. It just means you need to keep challenging yourself, keep setting new goals, keep expanding your horizons. Maybe it's learning a new skill. Maybe it's taking on a new business venture. Maybe it's pushing yourself physically with a new fitness challenge. Whatever it is, you need to keep that fire burning. Because here's the thing, a woman's attraction isn't static. It's not like once she's attracted to you, you're set for life. Attraction needs to be maintained. And in a long-term relationship, it needs to be continually rekindled. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by being a man who's constantly evolving, constantly improving. Now let's address the elephant in the room, sex. Because let's face it, for a lot of guys, the fear of ending up in a sexless marriage is a big reason they're hesitant about tying the knot. And it's a valid concern. We've all heard the jokes about married couples never having sex, about wives using it as a bargaining chip. But the truth is, in a healthy marriage with the right dynamic, sex doesn't decrease. If anything, it gets better. Why? Because you got a partner who knows your body, who you trust completely, who you can explore and experiment with without judgment. You got someone who's committed to your pleasure as much as their own. But again, this comes down to choosing the right partner and maintaining the right dynamic. If you're with a woman who genuinely desires you, who respects you as a man, who's attracted to your masculine energy, sex isn't going to be a problem. In fact, it's likely to be more and more frequent and more satisfying than anything you experienced in your single days. And let's not forget the other benefits of a solid marriage. Financial stability, for one. Shared expenses, the ability to build wealth together. It's a powerful combination. Emotional support is another big one. Having someone in your corner, someone who's got your back no matter what, that's invaluable. And when you decide to have kids, having a stable, loving home with two parents who respect each other, that's giving your kids a massive head start in life. So is marriage still worth it? For the average guy who's content with mediocrity, who's not willing to put in the work to become his best self, probably not. The risk outweighs the rewards. But for the man who's committed to excellence, who's put in the work to become the best version of himself, and who's smart enough to choose the right partner, absolutely fucking yes. Marriage isn't just about you and your woman. It's about creating a goddamn legacy that outlasts you. It's about building something so solid, so unshakable, that it stands as a testament to your existence long after you're gone. Think about it. You're not just creating a partnership. You're forging the foundation of a family dynasty. You're setting the stage for generations to come. When you do it right, a strong marriage becomes the bedrock upon which you raise children who aren't just surviving in this cutthroat world, but fucking thriving in it. Imagine this. You come home after a long day of conquering in your career. You walk through that door, and there they are, your kids. They're not some strangers you see on weekends. They're not distant beings you struggle to connect with. No, these are the little warriors you're molding every single day. You're their hero, their role model, their North Star. And it's not just you. It's the united front you and your woman present. The stability, the consistency, the unwavering support. That's the shit that turns kids into leaders. You get to witness every milestone, every triumph, every setback. You're there for their first steps, their first word, their first heartbreaks, their first victories. You're shaping their worldview, instilling your values, passing on your hard-earned wisdom. This isn't some part-time gig. This is full immersion parenting, and it's transforming not just your kids, but you as well. And here's the real mind bender. This isn't a short-term game. Fast forward a few decades, now you're watching your grandkids grow up. You're the patriarch of a tribe, the head of a clan. You've got this multi-generational thing going on under your roof or at your regular family gatherings. Your children are raising their children with the same values, the same strength, the same unshakable family bond that you instilled in them. That, gentlemen, is power. That's legacy. That's looking mortality in the eye and saying, I'm leaving something behind that's bigger than me. It's about creating a stable, thriving ecosystem that continues to flourish long after you've taken your final bow. And that ends the topic. And we'll open this up to discussions freely. Anybody that wants to jump in, go ahead.
That part, this really resonated with me. Reminded me of our private consult. I even highlighted it right now. The part that says a woman who's feminine in her energy, who's supportive of your goals, and who's willing to follow your lead. That doesn't mean she's a doormat. A high quality woman will challenge you and make you better, but she'll do it in a way that builds you up, not tears you down. That's exactly what I'm experiencing right now. And I have to thank you for that because it is true. And hell, because of that quote right there, is the reason I sent her this entire post. I sent it to her and to read. Because that's exactly what I'm feeling at the moment.
Beautiful.
And yeah, it is very powerful actually having someone who wants to build a legacy and actually doing the work. And it inspires me to actually do better and not being incompetent nor complacent because that's the hell that I don't want to live in anymore. And I'm doing everything, I'm doing everything I can to avoid that trap.
It's not just the perspective of how you want to lead, but ultimately whether or not you have given up in that perspective. I can't say I've particularly given up. I just know that my frame needs to improve before I ever pursue anything for real. And that's been the case since I was younger, since university years and all that kind of stuff. My frame has always been off. So I've always had a perception. I come from a traditional household. I come from South America. I have a decent perspective of what a man is. So it's kind of particular how I know that a required frame is needed for a relationship. And the quality of individuals in the states where I currently reside is not that of individuals where I come from. So that perspective tells me that marriage in this particular region is kind of in the backdrop. It's something else for the time being, at least in my particular pursuit.
Hey guys, I just to make sure that my girl's in the other room, so I need to make sure she's awake. For this topic. Not exactly there yet to talk about this, but anyway, no, I mean, yeah, marriage in the United States and the West is completely fucked. I mean, at this rate, I mean, if I decide to marry a girl from another country, it's still God first and government. Well, never. But it's a topic though that it's, you're not going to not just get pressure from your girl on, but also the rest of your family, at least for me.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand that concept just yet. It may take a little while for them to understand, like, yeah, you don't need to have a marriage to have a kid, like at least a government marriage, as well.
Yeah.
If the law is that strong, like you don't fucking need a piece of paper to tell you that you're married. And you don't need to have, I mean, commitments get broken under the government all the fucking time. So like, what's the fucking difference? I get pushed back on that all the time. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not married under the law, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, and arguably it's even stronger because you're doing it in midst of all that pressure, of doing it like the way that you want other people to do it. So you want to also be true to yourself and just be like, and you want to be true to yourself in that regard as well, and stick to your own principles and don't lay up either. That's also another big part of being a man, is sticking to your guns and, despite all the pressure that's on you, because there are a hell of a lot of other men out there who are getting cucked by their own wives and they're not able to, speak out for what they believe in, and thus here we are.
Yeah. So it's my belief that basically because it's no longer the 1950s and we don't live under like a Christian nation anymore, at least in general, people being Christians themselves as far as how they're identifying, we don't value the sanctity of marriage anymore. Like your vows mean nothing. Marriage is usually just a test from women today's to see how much you're committed, but it doesn't have the in sickness and in health, life and death kind of meeting that it had before. So because it's like the fear of God is no longer there. And also society just pushes this progressive ideology of how the new world is supposed to look, new relationships, new gender norms, new whatever. But it's quickly becoming a luxury thing that only rich people, well-off individuals and those physically gifted partake in, like I said very early in the video, because it makes sense if you're extremely attractive, because that's one way to keep your partner interested in you in the long term. So if you're blessed with good genes, and then two, if you're wealthy and you still partake in the sanctity of marriage, but in the more traditional route, not for love, but for marrying off into powerful families. This is why I think it'll still remain and only be a thing rich people partake in, simply from that point of view, that families are coming together, just like they used to back in the day. We're progressing in some ways and actually going back in others. Now it's becoming, because of cost of living and wages aren't keeping up with the rising inflation and housing market and everything else, that even booking a marriage hall, get like the dress for your girl, the cake, inviting people, having all the food, the catering, all that has just completely astronomically surpassed anything remotely resembling, like, what would you even say, fair for the average man's salary that's making, let's just say, $50,000 a year. I mean, you can go into significant debt, almost like a fucking house, just to have one wedding event. And that's why you saw, or at least there was a bunch of articles, if you haven't been keeping up with that stuff, is that the wedding industry basically is collapsing. Nobody's really partaking in these big weddings anymore. Just lavish weddings are that all that's left, where you see really well-off people having like superstar level weddings because they can afford it. But normal people are having like very close family invite only, 50 people max, private weddings like that, just to save money, if they're even having weddings at all. The new trend now is to just go on your honeymoon and go on vacation instead of having a wedding. Just say I do, and then go spend the money you would have otherwise spent on the wedding reception on a vacation or yourselves for a house if you could afford it together. But I think this trend is going to keep on going down and down and down as far as average people getting married. Financially, it doesn't make sense for them. Socially, it doesn't make sense for them. And we're churning out so many broken homes, both for men and women, like single parent homes, where people are essentially in a cycle of trauma from their families and their upbringing that they're actually dumping on their partners without even knowing. So these people end up, through their whole adult life until they get married, cycle through so many people, not knowing that they're one of the reasons that they ended up driving away said people out of their lives. Now, what ends up happening, which is what I've noticed and haven't really touched on the channel, it's you get, say, broken girl that drives a lot of men off constantly because of her trauma from her childhood. Eventually, she goes through her 20s. She's like 28, 29, 30, whatever. Meets a guy who is also broken in some way. He also has trauma, and he also has other issues from childhood, right? And so they get together, and then they do this thing called trauma bonding. It's where two people connect to one another, and sometimes toxic ways, others not, but most of the time in toxic ways because of their trauma from their childhoods. So you end up having two broken people together, brokenly trying to navigate a marriage or a long-term relationship, which eventually fails because the failure rate of, look at all the marriages today, 80% are initiated by women, over 50% overall just divorces. It really is just a coin flip. And that's because the average people that are getting married are so off the mark of what's needed, just like the article that I was reading you guys was saying, that you take these two broken people, you get this chick that doesn't value the man, you take a man that doesn't really value the woman, he's just there because she's convenient, or he's falling head over heels because he's inexperienced, or he really wants a woman because of what society will think of him, or he just really wants to get laid on a consistent basis. So he'll swallow some of the red flags she has, and he'll keep his head down, and maybe if I marry her, she'll stop getting crazy. Right? Some guys actually think that if I marry her, maybe she'll stop freaking out so much. She'll trust me more. She'll see that I'm serious. If I show her real commitment, maybe she'll stop acting like such a bitch. It's like a complete opposite will happen. She'll just crank that up to 11. And then some women that are broken with those guys accept that, but have the narcissist qualities that drive men away. So you end up in this like predator-prey relationship where, the guy is a pushover, a walking wallet, spineless turd, and then the woman is just extracting maximum resources at the expense of his sanity. And I think that's what the average marriage is today. Because the average man has to also compete with the what would you call it? Example of what a quality man is today. Like what I said in the videos before, being average is hell in the world today. Why? Because you're constantly compared to these top tier men. Your woman now has access to top tier men. Now, what happens when you have a woman that's damaged from childhood trauma, single parent home where a father or any male figure wasn't present, and she grows up consuming social media, all the depravity on TV, and then you, Mr. Average, step into her life and she's never dealt with men? Or the only men she's dealt with have pumped and dumped her because she went for the top percenters that obviously never show commitment. You have no shot. That's, again, the broken woman that I'm talking about. Now, this isn't something you can see like a tattoo or something like that. It's a deep psychological issue that masks itself very well in the beginning. Or guys just outright don't see the red flags because they're smitten. They're getting blowjobs. They're getting a lot of sex. They're just willing to throw away all the red flags they see until they put the ring on. Right. And then the women show, the mask comes off once the ring is on because they got this guy locked. By then, she's already got his claws into him. But again, you can't even blame the man or the woman. You have to go a level deeper still and say, we're churning out broken individuals on a societal level. That's why we have girls right now that can make, I saw a recent video, like a chick made $27 million in a, I don't know how long, maybe a month, maybe a little more than that on OnlyFans. And it's like guys I was reading the comments and we're like, women have it so easy. They do have it so easy. They are opportunists. It's true. Like if I was a woman, I would take the same opportunities because it's easy money. You know why it's easy money? Because men. So how do women have these opportunities? Because men give them the opportunity to do this. That's why they're opportunists. That's why the average man is screwed today, because of other men, not because women, because normal women today have millions of guys lined up in their DMs, millions of guys texting them. Here's $50. Good morning, sweetheart. $100 just because you're beautiful. All this other shit. Let me take you to a 5-star restaurant. I expect nothing in return. You have nothing but simps. We're living in the age of the simpocalypse. This is what's happening when so many men, millions of them, are willing to give away their value for free. That makes women entitled in your eyes as an average man. But they're just doing what men are giving them the opportunity to do. But we're so short-sighted, we only see the woman as not appreciating us instead of seeing how spoiled she's become because of other men. This problem will never fix itself until we fix men, because men have no fucking self-respect, especially if you watch the video today. We had a chick, I covered it for a second, that's just dancing with her boobs in a black see-through dress where you could see her nipple or whatever. And the comment section is full of sips, millions of views, those fake DJs that turn a knob and a dial, and that's it. So 0 effort. But simply because she had a thin dress on where you could see the outline of her nipple, she's got millions of views and making tens of thousands of dollars because of the sickness within men. Men allow and propagate degeneracy. Men legislate. Men run society. Women are fucking powerless. But men still blame women. Oh, women's fault for all the issues we got. Who fucking signs laws? Who goes to war? Who enforces law and order? Men do. Your biggest enemy is other men in this world. It's not women. They're actually powerless. Literally, if you wanted to, men could band together and take away their rights, and there's nothing they can do about it. This is just a fundamental fact of society. Women only have the rights that men grant them. Yet somehow, Stacy down the street is responsible for all your misery and pain and your loneliness. Make it make sense. So this is just, it's a neat little distraction in the culture wars to have men just hate on women. Oh, it's so easy, dude. While society around you is crumbling, while the roads get worse, poverty increases, your cost of living, your wage stagnates, all shit around you is getting worse and worse, and you're just looking at Stacy like, fucking bitch, you went out with that Chad and you told me no, and you made me feel bad and lonely, and now I'm going to go whack off to some porn, and I'm going to feel even worse, and then I'm going to ask another girl out, and I'm going to get rejected. It's all women's fault. Women are delusional. Yeah, but who made them delusional? Who's sending them money in their DMs, guys? It's men. Men are your biggest enemy. And until we somehow rehabilitate the weakness in men today, this is only going to keep getting worse. Now, the only solution that you have right away available to you is to go into societies where weak men are not present to the extent they are in the West. That means going into a more traditional, more law and order type society. That's like Eastern Europe. That's like Southeast Asia. That's all these nations that still have intact, multi-generational families. Typically, they don't have as much wealth as the West, which is part of the reason why they still stick together multi-generationally and don't do the nuclear family thing that we do in the West, because that means starving to death. So when you grow up in a household where all the males are present and all the females are present, you as a boy or a girl are growing up with a full breadth of experience. You're being cultured and you're being socialized properly, far beyond what any Western child will ever get to experience. So then they make great partners. That's why we say go overseas, find a woman overseas that's traditional, that's fit, that's friendly, that had her father present, her grandfather present, that was able to see what men are good for, what men bring to the table, how to value men, because that's all the difference in how your relationship will turn out. Now, you can roll the dice. You can do the whole needle in the haystack, right? To try to find yourself a traditional woman in the West, but you're battling against the courts. You're battling against the legal framework. You're battling against the sickening mentality and potential trauma in childhood, right? That's always going to be marks against you that you have to fight constantly in your relationship. So do you want a partner that's going to be a power struggle, potentially a battle for control? Or do you want someone that's already submissive, feminine, and wants to build a legacy with you? I'm trying to shift this perspective in men of blaming women or thinking feminism is the problem or all this shit's. Who instituted the legal framework for feminism? Who benefited from putting women to work? Who makes all the money from those taxes? Who? Ask the questions. Who benefits from people breaking apart and not coming together? Ask the bigger picture, societal questions here. And once you figure out where to look, you'll understand how the game is being played before your very eyes. You'll stop blaming men and women. You'll just look at them as sad fools that are being propagandized and controlled like a ventriloquist with the little strings without even knowing it. You're just watching people fall for the trap. That's fine. That'll help you vet and shift through people that are lower quality and you shouldn't even give the time of day to. Once you meet a woman that is like I described to you guys, that has self-awareness, critical thinking skills, and a good sense of self-esteem where she thinks for herself first, right? Creates her own thoughts, verifies every fact in her mind, doesn't look to outside sources for influence. You've got a gem, dude. But these women are increasingly rare because everybody's increasingly being propagandized, men and women in the West. We're indoctrinating people at record rate. Just look at the average young person today. Compare them to the average 60-year-old in their beliefs, in their mentality, gender norms, what's expectations in relationships, yada, yada. It's an unnatural change in a too fast of time. It's synthetic, and that's what we're trying to fight again. I digress. No more ear beatings. You guys take the stage. Go ahead.
All right. Really good points. I agree on everything. You brought up a good point on the social status. Like I didn't even think about it. The family, yeah, 100%. But then it goes beyond in a social status. Like you elevate 100%. When people, I have a problem with a lot of the red pill / black pill community or content creators, because a lot of them they just loop and they repeat the same issue and they just externalize the problem, pointing at like, oh, it's the women, feminism, this and this, and they totally neglect to self-reflect and what is my group, the men, what is their contribution. In my opinion, it's equal. I don't think it's one gender or the other. It's just the progression. The society has moved on. I blame technology, maybe. Like if you want to have just one root thing, technology, but then technologies, like you have to adapt to them. And if people don't adapt, they just get left behind with like the invention of cars or whatever. Like people don't adapting, like, all right, you're just losing. And it's the same with social media and all that. Like, yeah, there's so much good coming out of it. If you take ownership and are responsible in your social media use or in your online dating or whatever. Like there's rules and you just have to adapt to what is current. One good way to vet a woman for like a long-term relationship, like a marriage, in my opinion, is to go meet the father and go meet the siblings and basically get them on your side, because they have so much more insight on the daughter or the sister, and you get plugged into the family. You basically take over, like the father was handling his daughter and you basically just take over. Like, it's like, okay, like now it's your role. Like I think that is ideal. Like, is that possible always? Like, no, but like I've experienced that, and
Latin countries. That's how I date there. Like, I meet them and then I go right, like, let's meet your family. And if they're like, oh, there's no dad, I'm like, oh, red flag. This is trauma bonding. If I continue, not gonna do this. Like, not worship. And then in return, like, so the coach, it's like more of a classic courtship. If you lean towards that and they're open-minded to it, like, you probably have a winner here. And you can actually get the alliance. Like, I've had that where the brother was kind of like, okay, so you're seeing my sister and blah, blah, blah. And then they start joking and they're like, okay, what's in for me? Like, I need a motorcycle. Like, and then they like joke and you just like, they kind of tease you and shit test you, but kind of that's what they want. They want to be in on, what you're bringing to the family. And and in return, they got your back. They're like, if their sister acts up, they're like, get in line, don't ruin it for all of us. So, like, that's like a strategy I've been using.
Yeah, that whole thing about the father being present and active in her life is so alien for people in the West to hear. Like, I've met women here that were 27 years old, said the same shit. Like, I need to ask my father, no, I shouldn't be out past 11 this, or, things of that nature at 27. If you say that in the West, it sounds completely asinine. Like, what are you talking about? But that's how much people here still respect the family structure, the power of the patriarchy, or the say that the father has. And I don't know how, I know how and I know why, because to destroy people overall, but we moved away from a system that had the children's best interest at heart most of the time. Not everybody was good of parents, but most of the time your father, if you're a woman, has your best interest at heart and vets the man better than you ever could. And the fact that he gives his blessing, that's after he got to know the guy and vetted him and made sure he's a decent man. Now, women are forced to navigate this whole dating world with zero experience, zero male figures present whatsoever in these broken households. And how do you expect them to know how to pick a decent man anyways? So a lot of these chicks pick literally the worst guys, get their hearts broken, and then perpetuate this cycle of heartbreak onto other men. And they get trapped in this loop where they'll always be miserable, always chasing the wrong person. And they don't have a guiding force in their life, which used to be the one person that cares more about you than anyone else in the world, including the government, because the government likes to pretend they care about you today. But that was your own father. Why we moved away from that system and somehow consider it empowering is insane, dude. But that's the world we're in.
And some guys conform. My dad could be a good example of that. Coming to the States, they quickly conform to the social norms of how women are treated and the expectations that women receive. As a result, there's been friction in the relationship here and there. So it's kind of particular how the relationship and the culture does ultimately affect how people perceive things. One thing that you pointed out that really kind of rings a bell is that a lot of guys have set up these rules that permit this kind of reaction from women, and we blame women in regards to the actions other men have taken to set a social standard. The aspect that brings to mind is that as we try to move of Western societies and so on and so forth, we have to be conscious that we can't have the same standards of women that we had while in the West, because that will infuse certain ideas into the culture that can be negative, especially say like the Philippines and their way of being and so on and so forth. They have their social norms, but if we try to infuse what we have perceived here, there, we're going to damage a cultural aspect that we fell in love with. So the culture you bring to the table is also very important in a relationship.
Yes, fully agree with that one. Yeah. Paramount, actually.